We originally did this as an article in High School Tennis Coach, our monthly e-zine. And I got an email from one of my coaches in New York, one of your fellow coaches, and she says, "Dear Steve, here's a little boost in this horrible time of doom and gloom." It was right after September 11th. "I've been using your article on teaching girls to serve with my JV team. The skill level of the team is really quite low. For example, a forehand and a forehand volley look the same." All right? She said, "We've been blah, 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 blah," which I'm going to tell you today, okay, ever since the first practice on August 20th. All right? She said, "And guess what? It's working. My girls are consistently able to throw the ball into the service box, and their serves look pretty good. A nice fluid motion, good racket movement, and deep placement. They're actually serving better than many of the varsity girls. Thanks for your help, Ellen." Okay, so this stuff does work. If a Yankee can do it, you guys should be able to do it. Why is the title of this speech Teaching Girls to Serve? Why wouldn't it just be Teaching Kids to Serve, right? I'll give you the reason why. All right? If I were to say, I'm going to show you a boy's throw and a girl's throw, okay, you tell me which is which. All right? We know that there are 8 basic sports skills: running, walking, jumping, landing, catching, throwing, kicking, striking. Okay? For example, the striking skill. This is a forehand in tennis. This is a baseball swing. This is the golf swing. This is a hockey shot. It all uses one of the basic sports skills. If you look at me pass a football, if you look at me throw a pitch a baseball, or if you look at me serve, it's all the throwing motion, right? So we talk about, how many of you ever heard the expression, "you throw like a girl"? Right? You need a mature throwing motion to serve correctly, the loop serve, okay? And a lot of people think that the reason why girls throw like this is because physiologically they're different, okay? The musculature for throwing, which you're going to need for serving, is the same in boys and girls, which is why Serena and Venus and Jennifer Capriati and Brenda Schultz-McCarthy could serve harder than McEnroe and Connors did, all right? Another favor. So what we're going to do is do 2 things today. We're going to teach, the first part of this is, you've got a lot of girls who serve like this, and everybody wants to change that. Wouldn't it be nice if you could teach girls who serve like this to be able to serve left and right, deep and short, put a little pop on it without changing it? Because you may have seniors, you don't have a lot of time. If they don't have a mature throwing motion and you try to get them to turn sideways, use a continental grip, it's like teaching me how to serve left-handed. Okay? So we're going to do the first part of this on how you can teach girls who serve like this to serve like this better. Then we're going to teach you how to develop a loop serve for girls. Okay? And you can do both over the course of a season. Okay? So first of all, let me get the right lecture here. Yep, folded it backwards. So again, we'll start out with the frying pan serve, and we'll end up with the loop serve. It's kind of like if you stay and eat your vegetables, you get your dessert at the end, okay? All right. We know that at the recreational level, you don't need power all the time to win points, okay? If you can serve to their backhand, if you can move them around, if you can get them in, we want to be able to get your girls to get their ball in every time. We want them to be able to get depth, direction, pace, all right? So let's look at this serve. You've got a couple of types who will just serve with the arm, and they try to get everything with the arm, and they have one of those. You have some who might serve with the wrist, okay? And you start to see a little bit more pop on the ball, okay? But the problem is they can't direct it, right? You've seen kids who, in doubles, if they want to serve down the middle, they'll walk over here, and they basically send a Western Union to the opponent that says, "I'm serving down the middle," right? How can you work on direction, okay? Well, first of all, we want the girls to get the ball in, okay? And there's an old saying, if you're going to double fault, where do you double fault? Long. How many times do you see a double fault right into the bottom of the net? Because they panic. Teach girls to double fault long. What'll that do? It'll teach them to hit up on the ball. Okay, and now they have a nice deep serve. So one of the things you want to teach girls who serve like this, okay, is the tactic of hitting up on the ball so that they can get the ball in. They should never double fault short. Okay? One of the things you need to teach girls is to hit up on the ball. And we'll talk about the physics of the serve a little bit later, but it's important that they learn they've got to hit up on the ball, okay? Now, the next thing we want to do is teach them how to hit left and right, all right? There are a lot of girls who, if you can serve to their backhand, they have a terrible backhand. Or if they've got a Western grip and you can serve it short, they can't get to it, all right? Or somebody has no lateral movement, so we've got to work on placement, okay? Couple of things you can do. First of all, you can have the girls practice throwing. And you have them throw the racket. You can say, look, follow through where you want the ball to go. We know that once you hit the ball, it's gone, and your follow-through has nothing to do with it. But it seems to help people line up if you tell them follow through where you want the ball to go. Okay? That's one tip you can give them, is to have them follow through. But we need to get them to practice like they play. So one of the things you can do for direction is this. I'm not going to serve, my primary target is not going to be in the court. Do you see the net strap? If I were to serve 2 to 3 inches to the right of the neck strap, you think the ball's going to go into the court straight ahead of me, don't you? But if I serve 2 to 3 inches to the right of the net strap, look what happens. I start to be going down the middle. And I now have a reference point where I can start placing my serve. You could place some towels to the left if you wanted them to go wide and have them serve over those towels, okay? And now you get your direction. But it's very important that you teach girls to place the ball. And it's important that you don't just teach them, you've got to have practice routines that they can do every day so that when they get into a match and they're in the third set and it's 4-5, 30 all, you know, they should be able to comfortably say, okay, I know exactly what to do. I'm going to go right to the right of the net strap. If you also look at the net strap and the center service line and the service line going across, it forms a little triangle, right? Especially the farther you walk over. You can ask your girls to try to serve into that triangle, okay? And use that as a reference point. Another thing you can do to exaggerate is this. Try to get them to fault 1 or 2 inches to the right of the service line, okay? See if they can serve, whoops, I almost can't, right? So now, that will get them so far over, and if they start doing this, then they'll start moving it over. I can't miss, sorry. That's 3 out of 4. But you want to use primary targets and secondary targets to learn direction, okay? It's very important that you do that. So let's talk about pace. Where does pace come from on a serve like this? Well, first of all, if you've got someone who's just doing it with her arm, you may want to try and introduce the wrist a little bit more, okay? You get a little bit more control, you can get a little bit more pop on the ball, okay? Have you ever seen those girls who kind of pull the racket down to get pace? Why are they doing that? Well, force equals max times acceleration. What is force? Everyone wants to hit the ball with power. It's actually force, right? Where does force come from? Mass times acceleration. Mass is the ball and the racket. Not much you can do about that. So how do you get your racket traveling faster? Well, what part of the racket is traveling the fastest? Here, here, or the top? This sweet spot doesn't give you the most power on a serve. This up here, called the first note of harmonics, gives you the most power. The German Tennis Federation videotaped the top men servers in the world years ago, okay? And they found the top 50 guys all had the exact same service motion. But Stieck and Becker and Ivanisevic and Rosette, these guys with these huge serves, consistently hit the ball up here in the first note of harmonics. Okay? So remember to tell your girls that if they toss it a little higher, okay, and hit it toward the tip, that might give them a little bit more pace, okay, as opposed to trying a big arm swing. Okay? So if your girls who serve like this could get it in every time, could go down the middle when they needed to, whoops, could go down the middle when they needed to, or go wide and have about this much pace, whoops, wouldn't that be a nice serve to have? The problem is, you can have your kids looking great during a practice, but now it comes time for a match and it's not sticking. How can you do that? Let me show you some drill routines to work on this serve, okay? Normally you want to use cones. I didn't have any cones with me. When you serve, you basically want to serve wide, down the middle, or into the body, okay? At the beginner level, you basically just want to teach them two areas, serving left and right, right? Forehand and backhand. They don't have enough control yet to serve to 3 different areas. Thank you. So one of the things you're going to have to do is you need to make your girls nervous when they're practicing, which means you need to introduce targets, realistic target areas, and you have to learn point situations. Okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to have my girls warm up left and right. Okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to break into a practice, okay, where the girls now have to play a game. They have to call it. My first serve in a match, I'd probably serve maybe wide to the forehand. Okay, even though that went in, that's a fault, because that's not what they were aiming. Second serve. Bounce the ball 3 times. Now I'm going to go down the middle. Okay, 15 love. Have them come over and play a game. Okay? They should play a whole match, and they should do this every day. And if they're struggling with the one serve, they can use their reference points. But again, this isn't something you work on once a week or something. This has got to be every day. And you've got to make it a game situation, and you've got to make it with targets and with points. How many times do you see even good kids come up and serve before a match, and what do? They just unload a bunch of first serves. They spin the racket, they win. Good luck, let's go. They miss the first serve, now they're in play, and all of a sudden, they've got to do a second serve, 3/4 speed slice. Did they warm that up? Did they practice that? How many kids practice 3/4 speed? Second serves, right? We don't practice that, we don't warm up that way, so what happens when a match comes? It's new. So again, we need to start with the mechanics, we need to start with these primary and secondary reference points of the strap and the follow, whatever it takes, but every time you work on mechanics and teach them how to hit, you've then got to teach them how to play. And if every day your girls are practicing 1, 2, 3, I'm going to go down the middle, shoot, now it's 15 second serve. Some girls, obviously, they're not going to have a difference between a first serve and a second serve. Some kids do change their motion, okay? But again, we want your girls to go into a match situation, and no matter what the score, say, I do this every day for 10 minutes in practice. This is nothing new, right? So it's important to know that you're going to have some girls who want to serve like this. They don't want to learn this whole motion. They're nervous. We need to teach girls who serve like this how to use it better. And by teaching them to hit up here, they'll get a little bit more pop. By teaching them to use the wrist instead of the arm, they'll get a little more pop. If they use these primary reference points, they'll get better with their direction mechanically. But they have to practice in a game and a match environment where they're a little bit nervous, right? As your girls start to get the hang of this, now we want to divide the court into 3. If you could do me a favor, my ball's kind of rolled. Just divide the court into 3 if you would. I guess I just need 2 balls. I just need 2 balls there. Just put down 2 balls. I want to divide the court into 3 lanes. Yeah, 1 right there. Move that one in. There you go. As you get better, you'd like to serve wide, you'd like to serve down the middle, and you'd like to serve into the body, right? Especially if you've got some with a big 2-handed backhand or a big forehand, you want to handcuff them. So now you're going to do the same drill, but now they've got a call, and this becomes much more difficult. And even if they're missing, they're starting to miss into the court. But if you thought they were nervous before, now they've got to divide the court into 3. And you can have 4 to 6 to 8 girls on a court doing this. You know, they come up. If they're doubles players, they would do it from here. And then they would go over and they'd keep score against themselves. Now they come over here. If they're your varsity team, have them do the 3. You'll start to see your kids, you know, your boys especially, well, we're talking about girls, but your better girls will be going in and hitting their big first serves, but now they're going to have to practice a 3/4 slice or topspin serve, right? Second serve, they lose the point. Nobody wants to lose to themselves. How humiliating to lose 40 love when there's nobody on the other side of the net, right? Okay, but again, practice like you play, or you're going to play like you practice. How many times when you practice your serve do you bounce the ball 3 times? Do you decide where you're serving? And again, they're going to start to think tactically. If you're down 15-30, where do you go with the first serve? Where do you go with the second serve? At lower levels, you want to serve to the backhand. At higher levels, you can't do that because you're opening up the alley. You're taking your partner to the point. You're giving the short cross-court return. So as your kids get better, even your girls who are ranked, they're going to have to start serving down the middle. I was working at an academy in Georgia, and I asked the kids, if you serve in volley, what kind of serve do you use? They all said, I kick it high to the backhand. And I said, well, that lets your opponent go right back down to your feet. Why wouldn't you slice the ball into their body? I said, gee, I never thought of that. So we started having them practice that, and now they had to practice the three-quarter slice into the body, even on a first serve, because you don't want to come in behind a big flat serve on the first serve. So what we want to do, again, every day we want to come out and we want the girls to warm up their serves. You want to give them some instruction on mechanics. You want to give them some instruction on direction, okay? And then you want to have them play out points. One final tip. I had a woman who could barely get the ball over the net. Got it in every time, but literally people were standing inside the service line to return her serve. And I said, do me a favor, Kathy. Can you fault long? Can you hit the ball maybe 2 feet past the service line? And she went like this, and all of her serves started going in deep. And she said, oh, gosh, I know what I have to do now. Okay, so that's another primary reference point if you have girls who can't serve deep and they bring people in. Remember, on a deep serve like that, if you hit me a short serve, I can run around it and hit a forehand, right? But if you hit a deep serve down to the middle, it's harder for me to run around it, right? And I can't attack it. So even if it's a weak serve, you've got to teach your girls depth. And that means hitting up, and that means using that target there. So again, we just don't want to teach our girls mechanics. We want to teach our girls strategy and tactics, right? Left and right, deep and short, get the second one deep. Oh my God, it's 30-40, bounce the ball 3 times in a second serve. All right, and the girls will get that feedback and see what they need to do. So it's very critical that you have the girls play and do that every day, okay? So now let's talk a little bit about developing this loop serve, all right? It's going to go kind of similar to what we did here. You need to teach girls how to throw. And we know that people learn kinesthetically. They learn by doing. You can't sit there and say, okay, girls, everybody turn sideways, throw the ball by your ear, pronate, I want it, blah, 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 blah. Have the girls go up and say, hey, girls, let's throw some balls. I want you to just see if you can get them in the service box. And the first throw you're going to see never even makes it in there. And they're going to start figuring out, you know, well, and they're looking, maybe if I use my hips, right? If you look at a 3-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl, 3-year-old girl throws like this, 3-year-old boy throws like this. Why do guys learn to throw? Because we're throwing mud balls and sticks and snowballs. We're throwing anything we can, right? And then we're throwing baseballs, we're throwing footballs. Guys, how many of you ever had your father teach you pronation? But yet we all learned it, right? Because we figured, hey, if I turn sideways, I can throw this stone a little farther. Or you know what? If I go up, I can get this to go farther. So guys figured it out, okay? So what we want to do is we want girls to start out throwing for just a couple of minutes. Have them throw 3, 4, 5 balls on this side. Have them throw 3, 4 balls over on that side. Now you can come back and give them some instruction. Hey girls, don't throw like this. See if you can turn sideways. That's the first thing you can have them do. Hey, how about throwing up? Okay? How about if you throw your hips, then you can start giving them some instruction. But the first thing is to get the girls to see what it's like to throw the ball into the court. Once they've started getting it in, we progress to left and right. Okay, girls, throw the balls to the right, throw the balls to the left. And now they've got to start working on direction. Well, why don't you point your finger where you want the ball to go after it's done, or follow through that way. Okay, that will kind of help me. You've got to develop throwing. Now let's have a game. Debbie, where are you going? I'm going to go left. No points. What I like to do is have a game. If you get your first serve, your first throw in, and your first serve in, you get 2 points. Excuse me, you get 1 point. If you get your second one in, you get 2 points. If you get them both in, you get a bonus. You get 3 points. And the girls play a game against each other. We do not want you to miss your second serve. If you don't get your second serve in, you get -1. And you go through the hopper, and the girl who wins has the most points doesn't have to pick up balls. But now it's a whole problem-solving thing where they got to figure out, what do I need to do to get it in? You'll have some girls who can naturally throw across court, but they cannot throw down the line. And you've seen kids who have real good court serves in the deuce court and they can't serve in the ad court. You're going to have to practice this. Now, this is something you have to do every day. But if you take a girl who serves like this, does not have a mature throwing motion, and you've got a book or a video, and you try to teach them the correct service motion and the grip, it's going to frustrate them. They can't do it. It's just like teaching a left-hander how to play for the first time. It's difficult. I actually had a friend when I was younger. He was the best player at our club. He's an older guy, older when I was a kid. He was in his 30s. And he was the best player, but he had a real awkward service motion. That was the weakness in this game. And I asked him why that was, and he said, I had a stroke, and the left side of my body was paralyzed for a few months. As rehabilitation, I decided to learn to play tennis. And he said, as a kid, I never threw left-handed, so I never developed a mature throwing motion. So to this day, even though I'm real good at all the rest of the strokes, I struggle with my serve. How can you practice the throwing motion indoors? How about wadding up a piece of paper? Okay, it's not that aerodynamic, you're not going to break any windows, and you have target areas at home, right? If it rains and you go indoors, you have these foam balls. I've seen some people selling these foam balls, okay? So, again, practice every day, especially if you've got girls who are in middle school or freshmen or sophomores and you want them to be your state champions, right? You can do it in a matter of weeks, but think about if you do it over the course of seasons. So the key to developing the loop serve is don't teach the loop serve until they've learned the mature throwing motion. Some people might disagree with that, but again, it's going to be awkward, it's going to be hard on the muscles. Wouldn't it be easier and less frustrating, and they're less likely to resist you if you have them learn to throw first? Then you can come up and say, hey, when I was younger we had wooden rackets. We used to teach people to throw rackets. You'd come out in the court with 5 or 6 or 7 rackets, have them hold it like a tomahawk, and we would actually have them throw rackets over the net, okay? Because it's the throwing motion, correct? And so now people get it and it feels more comfortable. Then you can go into your teaching methods of, you know, whether you use the PTA or PTR method or some other method. We're not going to go too much into those types of mechanics and systems. But again, if you want to teach girls to serve, in the beginning of the season, work on this. Work on having them play better with this, okay? Have them practice the throwing motion. If you go to the website, we have some articles on planning the season. I'll be talking about that next week. You're going to have to divide your season into 3 anyways, right? Pre-competitive, competitive, and in-season. The first 3 to 4 weeks is when you work on your strokes and your mechanics. That's when you can be working on your throwing. Then if you have another 3 weeks, then you can start working on this serve. And this might be a serve where this season they're just going to use it when they're up 3 love or 4 love or 40 love, right? It may not be their Wimbledon serve. When it counts, they're going to go back to this. But if you teach at any level and you tell people you want to change their strokes, they get nervous and they resist you. If you say we're going to add a new stroke, we're going to add slice or whatever, they're more likely to do that. So again, let girls know, hey, you want to serve like this? Great. We're going to teach you how to serve like this better. And in the meantime, we're all going to teach you how to throw, because later on in the season, we're going to teach you how to serve like this. Okay? So that's important. And then again, even with the throwing, divide the court into 3 now. It becomes much more difficult. Okay, even for a guy to throw a ball all the way to the fence, you got to put a lot of effort into it. Okay? So for a little girl to try to even get the ball over the fence, it's kind of difficult. So again, use these games and teaching methods, all right? So let's talk about a little bit about the mechanics of a loop serve. Big debate right now about which is going to cause less injuries. Just as we know you can throw overhand and you can throw sidearm, which is kind of like this, there's a big debate on the efficacy of the overhand serve, which most people like, and the sidearm serve, which Vic Braden likes. You should let your kids try both of them. A sidearm serve is really not like this. It simply means you want to toss the ball a little bit lower and to the left or to the right, and there'll be ostensibly less rotator cuff wear if you do this way. Okay, but either serve is okay, the high toss or the one out there, but realize that you're looking at 2 different, if you get girls who may play softball, maybe they've learned the sidearm throw. Okay, don't necessarily have to correct that. Okay, we'll look at grips. As girl, you want to serve with the frying pan serve. We're using the Western grip, right? Because it gives you a lot of control, and your hand is behind it, and you're not getting much body into it. So this is where you get some of your pace. As you get to your loop serve, you're going to want to use a continental serve, which is like a tomahawk, right? And we teach kids, try to hit the edge of your racket, and they're like, this is weird. Okay, now what you do is, at the very end, I want you to turn the racket out Oh, I see. That makes sense. So use your continental grip. As you get better, we're now teaching the Eastern backhand grip. Okay? If you try to learn this at full speed, you might hurt yourself. But by turning over to an Eastern backhand grip, look what happens. Look at the slice and stuff I get on there. If I hit higher on the ball, okay, I'll start to get it in. But have some of your better players experiment with an Eastern backhand grip, which will give more slice, more topspin. Again, whenever you're learning something new, don't do it at full speed because you don't want to hurt yourself. Some people hate this. The first time you try it, it's really awkward. But it'll really make your ball ride that way out. Whenever I serve in the deuce court, if I want to ace somebody down the middle, I go to an Eastern backhand grip, and now the ball runs away from them. So not only do I have it down the middle, but it's tailing away. So that's a new grip a lot of people, not a new grip, but a grip people haven't heard too much about is the Eastern backhand grip. As your girls get better and they can place the ball, if you want to add some more slice or spin, you might want to consider an Eastern backhand grip, okay? Where are we here? Okay, the stance. You don't want to get too hung up and say you must stand 45 degrees with your feet like this. You want the girls to get comfortable. If they throw like this or they throw like this, you know, you want to get them to stand like that. One of the reasons why people can serve well on the deuce court, but they can't serve as well on the ad court, is because they use the exact same stance. You want to kind of face your opponent, nice comfortable stance, okay, 45-degree angle, but don't get too hung up on the technique, okay? What I do is tell the girls, if I gave you $100, if you could throw your racket over the fence with this grip, how would you do it? And they all walk up and, you know, they start to do this and they see what stance it is. So that's one tip you can give them. How would you throw your racket over the fence? What grip would you use? What stance? Okay? So don't spend too much time on the stance, okay? Ball toss location, this is critical at all levels. If you could come here for a second. Right here, right down here. Come on. There's basically two ways you can serve with your footwork. You can start like this with your weight forward. You rock back, and then you rock forward. You can also stand back and then rock forward. Okay? If you would come here for a second, put your hand up, your racket hand up. Okay? Try to push my hand. Wimp. Now try to push my hand. Much better. What did she do different? She was in front of her. Thank you very much. Watch how many of your kids, when they rock back, toss the ball, and now when they come forward, look where the ball is. You will see many, if not most of your kids, even at the top levels, whose balls are dropping on the baseline or behind. And you just saw what happened with her, how wimpy she was back here and how much more powerful she was here. Think of the damage you're going to do to shoulders by trying to arm your serve back here all the time. So what you're going to do is, how many of you have video? If you can set up a video camera, just have the kids toss and then play it back from them. They'll be amazed. If not, just have your kids toss and look what happens. So one thing you need to do is get the kids to toss the ball in front of them. Okay? I tell them, you can tell them 1 to 2 feet in front of you, but what I do is, it's just years and years of doing this, it's hard to change. I say, throw the ball a foot or two far out in front of you. And instantly they start connecting. I say, keep going forward until you hit one right in the bottom of the net. Sorry. Right in the bottom of the net. Okay, that's too far. Now bring it back a little bit. But where you're going to get a lot more power is if you're serving with 100 pounds of body as opposed to 4 pounds of arm. So it's very critical that you get the ball toss in front of you, whether it's a sidearm serve or an overhand serve. The other thing you'll notice is a lot of the kids are tossing the ball inside their shoulder. Okay? Look at where their tosses land. Not only do they land behind the baseline, but how many kids bring their arm back and look at where, trying to serve like this. Okay? Especially with Vic Braden's sidearm serve. It's not Vic's particularly, but you're going to be a lot more to the left. Okay? And look where the ball's going to land. Out there. Even if you're doing an overhand serve, you still want the ball maybe outside of your feet or outside of your shoulder, or maybe even with this shoulder. But think about it, where would you rather push something, here or here? It's very important that you work with your kids on your toss. And you have a rule. Anytime I yell stop, I want you to stop moving. And you say to the kids, you know, as they're practicing, stop. Look what happens. I'm not kidding. 1, 2 feet back here, you'll see tosses going all over at all levels. One of the biggest improvements you can make to a lot of kids' serves without making any other changes is to get them to get their toss out in front of them. Okay? If you're going to move a heavy piece of furniture, you do it like this, right? You don't walk right up to it and do this. So ball toss location is critical. I always teach them up and out. Toss it up, in front of you, and out to the right a little bit. If you're left-hander, change that. But make sure you're looking at those two things with your kids. And before you do anything, walk around behind them and look where the toss is going. Is it going here? Is it going here? Okay? And then walk here and see where the ball's going. We talked about this kind of a serve. Remember, the tip of the racket is traveling faster. So again, if you get the toss higher, okay, you can hit up on the ball and you can get this tip of the racket. So ball toss for a frying pan serve, again, you want it higher and having them hit up here. There's an article at the website talking the physical reasons for choking. For example, when you're choking, you tend to hit more slice than topspin. Because when you hit topspin, you've got to change the direction of the ball. You've got to stop the direction and change it. When you hit slice, you send the ball away from you with the same bounce and spin it's coming. So people start to slice when they choke. We also know that when people start to choke on the serve, they bring the ball toss down. And this is why this happens, right? It takes a lot more guts to get up there and do this. When you start choking, what do? So that's why we say if you're going to double fault long, because we want the toss up and we want them hitting high, correct? So it's important that you work on for the kids who already know how to serve and the girls who already know how to serve, if they want a little bit more pop, we want them to get their tosses up and out, okay? So that's your ball toss location. All right, what are the 4 main components of a serve? There are so many different styles. What about Andy Roddick? What about Pete Sampras? I see people taking their arm back. I was just at the USTA Tennis Teachers Conference. I watched Dr. Ben Kibler's lecture. He's one of the top biomechanists in the country who's working with the USTA and everybody. And he said there's 4 major components to the serve, okay? The first one is this deep knee bend and push off. We'll talk about why girls don't do this in a minute. But this is called reactive power. This is where you get a lot of your power, okay? When you push against the earth wins, okay? So you need to use those legs. The second component is this rotation here. And that's why girls don't get a lot of power when they serve like this, because they're just serving with their arm. At some point, the arm needs to cock, okay? And then they have what's fancy they call long chain rotation, long axis rotation. Have you heard of the wrist snap? Everybody heard of the wrist snap on the serve? They say snap your wrist. Kind of false. Everybody hold your hand like you're doing a chop, tomahawk chop. Now, without moving your forearm, just move your wrist. See if you can just move. Does anyone think Mark Philippoussis gets 140 miles an hour from the wrist snap? Yet doesn't every magazine talk about snap your wrist for power? All right. Why is that? Well, here's the deal. If I were going to race to that service line, and I stop at the service line, I have to slow down before it, right? So I want to run past the service line. Where we know you get almost all your power is from the knees to the shoulders, okay? This is kind of fancy, you don't have to write this down, but it takes 4,000 watts of energy to produce a highly effective tennis stroke, okay? So a good tennis serve requires about 4,000 watts of energy, okay? You can only get 300 to 600 watts of energy from your arm, depending on if you're a little girl or a big Russian guy. Okay, so even if you're a big pro guy, and you need 4,000 watts to serve, and you can only generate 600 with your arm, where does the rest of it come from? We know that most power comes from internal shoulder rotation. Oh God, how do I teach that? I can say snap your wrist, I can say high five. How do I tell someone rotate your shoulder internally? Very simply. We want to break the kinetic chain at the final link, meaning we don't want a smooth stroke, okay? For example, on the forehand, we open the hips first and let the arm come through. On a serve, if you want to get power, you would throw your hips at the ball a little bit early. And now my arm comes through. But the problem with teaching the wrist snap, a lot of pros are teaching wrist snap for more power and spin. Kids are almost relying exclusively on the arm and starting the serve here, and they're just doing this. Okay, that's a pretty good serve, but pretty soon I'm going to tear my arm up. Whereas if I just relax and let this happen, the whole point of the wrist snap is it lets you finish the stroke. If you don't do that, you've got to slow down here. So where power comes from is here to here, okay? And what you've got to do is throw the hips. Everybody, if you want to stand up and try that, just stand up and throw your hips without moving your arm and watch what happens. Your arm comes through anyways, right? It's a kind of a violent motion. The balls will be flying all over. You don't want to do this at full speed because you don't want to hurt yourself, but this is where the power comes from, on the serve, okay? Thank you very much for picking up that those balls for me. So now, what has developed is what we call a push-through motion and a pull-through motion on the serve. Okay, and I'll show you those too. What the men are using is called the push-through motion. If you see men serve or hit ground strokes, their hips are coming into the ball, okay? And they're using these muscles here, okay? This is how they're serving. If you watch a lot of women, even Serena and Venus, on ground strokes and on second serves, they're not using the legs, they're not rotating the upper body, and what they have is called the pull-through motion, where they're using these muscles here, abs, obliques, and they're pushing away from the ball, and the butt kind of comes out. Even on a ground stroke, you see them pushing through. So this difference between this pull-through motion and push-through motion is if you can get people to open up their hips on a serve, or if you can get them to open up their hips on a ground stroke, this is where the power is. But watch women for this pull-through motion where they're coming kind of like on an angle out like this, okay? And the body is traveling backwards. The hips are traveling backwards instead of forward. And that's something you can work on with your girls when they throw. Is say, girls, now that we're throwing, why don't you throw your hip a little bit sooner than the rest of your body? As opposed to trying to do everything with the arm or even the upper body, okay? How many of you have heard that you want to brush the ball from 7 o'clock to 1 o'clock to get more slice, it's topspin? Or you would brush the ball, peel it like an orange, that's how you get your slice and your topspin. We know from science that once you make contact with the ball, it's gone, okay? Any kind of brushing or whatever doesn't have anything to do with it. You can hit the ball at 7, but you can't go to 1. And why would you want to? The longer it's on there, the more you can lose control, right? So if you want these spins and speeds, you want to hit it at different points on the ball, okay, on the face of the clock. But every serve, you should pronate. Whether you're doing slice, whether you're doing topspin, a lot of people are like, no, this is for slice and this is for topspin, and they're doing all this other kind of stuff. Every serve, you should pronate. But depending on where you make contact with the ball, that's what kind of spin it will be putting on there, okay? So, again, why am I talking about this? Where do you get more spin if it's not with that brushing motion? Have your girls and your guys use their legs to get more spin, okay? With the same kind of a motion. Did you see that? That's why Serena and Venus and a lot of the women on the tour have such weak slice second serves. They don't have big topspin serves because they don't use the legs. Now Venus, Serena Williams, #1 in the world. You know, how much more #1 does she need to be? Okay? What we know is that she is using a lot more effort to get the same results than if she hit the ball correctly. But again, she's #1 in the world, why change it? The Houston Astros, I don't know if you remember Mike Scott. I was talking to some biomechanists who work with the team, and he injured himself. And after he was rehabilitated, they came back, and his velocity was back right where it was. His fastball was as fast as it was. They said, we're putting him back in the rotation. The sports medicine people said, he's made an adjustment. He's going to tear up his shoulder. They said, no way. He's throwing the same speed. They put him back in the lineup. 2 weeks later, he's gone. Okay? So even though Venus is #1 and Serena's #1, and a lot of the top players in the world are #1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, we see a lot of injuries. Don't say, well, Serena sticks her butt out, and Serena doesn't bend her legs, and Venus doesn't rotate. They could be better. So the things that you're going to, it all goes back to the toss motion, right, or the throw. So again, have your girls bend their legs when they throw. Have your girls open up their hips when they throw. Have your girls throw the ball up, okay? That's a major component of the serve we haven't talked about yet, okay? Talk a little bit about physics. We've got 3 sweet spots on a racket, okay? Down here is your power zone. The middle of the racket or center of percussion, which we consider the sweet spot, gives you your nicest feel and control. Up here is the first note of harmonics. On a ground stroke, it feels kind of dead, right? But on the serve, remember, we want to get the ball higher up on the tip of the racket because that is the fastest part of the racket, and you'll get higher speeds. So one thing is, know about the 3 speed spots, okay? On a loop serve or a frying pan serve, okay? Now, you want to teach people to hit up on the ball. Everybody watch this serve. If I were to tie a piece of string at the top of my racket and get some 6-foot, 7-foot guy here to hold his racket up, and we walked it to the net, and we held it over the net, it would go way past the service line. It's physically impossible for humans to serve down. You must serve up. So I'm actually going to hit this ball up, okay? And you can kind of see that. I'm actually hitting the ball up. But sometimes people won't see that, so what we can do to demonstrate that is to say, look at this. Okay? Now that's a pretty nice serve from a kneeling position. But there are still people who don't believe me, right? All right, so am I serving up? Am I getting a nice serve? Wouldn't it be nice if your girls could serve that speed? But that will demonstrate to them that you do hit up on the ball and the spin brings it down. If you don't have that kind of a serve and you've got some good players on your team, maybe you can take them aside and say, hey, practice that. I want to show the team. Because you don't want to look kind of weird, you know, if you're not doing it right. I'm very lucky that I got all of those in. Sometimes it takes a few. But you can see the physics of the serve demand that you hit up. And that means that you're going to have to toss the ball, keep your head up. How many kids, watch your kids who do this? Okay? So hitting up is very important on the serve, and if you can demonstrate that, if you can have your kids kneel down and serve some, if you can have them sit down and serve some. But those are about 80+ mile-an-hour serves from a sitting position. Well, why do I need legs? Because I want this shoulder in a few months. Okay? So it's important that you use the whole body, but if I can do that sitting down, imagine what I can do with my legs and my hips all going up. Okay? And again, it gets back to, now the girls will see, okay, I do need to throw up. Your first time your girls serve or throw, they're going to throw straight ahead, and they can't make it. And then when they start to realize, okay, if I throw up, and by throwing up, you get more body into it, right? So again, you want to demonstrate to the girls the physics of throwing up, okay? When you're practicing your slice, some of the teaching pro organizations say, look, let's see if you can hit a ball like 1,000,000 miles in the air and get it to go in, okay? And you have them working on this for their slice or their topspin serves. See if you can do that, okay? And then you can start adding the legs, okay? And now I get a little more slice by adding the legs, right? Because I'm going up more. That's where your slice and your spin comes from, is here. Okay, that's where you get your excessive slice and spin. But again, we have a lot of women who don't know how to throw. They use the pull-through motion. They don't bend the knees. They don't rotate. But again, teach your girls how to push off. You've all seen a lot of the top players who are literally in the air when they make contact, correct? They're pushing off harder, all right? We talked a little bit about the ball toss location, okay, already. And we talked about that physics. How can you teach this jumping motion a little bit more? Okay, there are some drills you can do. One is to have your kids put down your racket, and 10 times you want them to jump as high as they can in the air. Okay, have them jump 10 times, reach as high as they can. Now take your racket, and I want you to jump as high as you can, and see if you can get some of that in there, okay? Do that 3 sets of 3. It's called plyometrics. It'll help your kids to get that pushing and that coordination, okay? The next thing you can do is if you have those low benches, okay, have your kids get on the bench and then have them jump off. And it can be a step, aerobic little thingy. It can be bleachers, but as soon as they land, now they've got to jump as high as they can. So they jump and jump. They jump off the bench and spring up 10 times. Now have them pick up their racket and practice this deep knee bend. A lot of people saw Becker doing that. They didn't know why, so they all started imitating him. None of these things are going to work by themselves. You get your power from coordination of the kinetic chain. And if you open your hips too soon and now you're just serving with your arm, you're dead. So it's a coordination of things. Okay? but you want to learn that jump. So those are 2 drills you can do. Those are conditioning drills, and they'll help you with your serve. Okay? Give you another quick conditioning drill. How many of you have medicine balls? Some of the smaller medicine balls. If you take these 2-pound medicine balls, have your kids throw balls to each other with their correct service motion. And then they pick the medicine ball, and just like they would serve, they do this 10 times. Pick up the racket. The central nervous system is now set to resist 2 to 3 pounds. They've got a 12-ounce racket. What's going to happen? Your arm's going to go much faster than you could make it yourself. It's called overspeed. All right? Do that 8 to 10 times. Serve 6 to 8 times. That's how long that'll last before your body gets used to it. 3 sets of 3. You can do that every day. You can also have them throw tennis balls as hard as they can, as far as they can. Now your central nervous system is set to have your arm travel at this speed. It's not so much resistance. Now you have them pick up the racket, which is a little heavier, and it's still going to try and move that way. So again, these are things you can do with your girls to help them learn to throw, help improve their we call it the dynamic stereotype, all right? The technical stereotype of the serve is your grip and your footwork and your stance. The dynamic stereotype is the internal rhythm and timing and all that. So even during this season, when you don't want to be monkeying, you're right in your conference season, you don't want to be monkeying around with the grips and footwork and stuff, you can still have them do the medicine ball thing. You can still have them do the plyometric thing, okay? We're going to go back. I've already kind of given you the drills and practice routines, kind of went out of order a little bit. Again, every day, have the girls throw targets to 2 targets, then to 3 targets. Have them keep score. Every day, have them practice serving in games where you're using directions. If just getting in is rudimentary, go left and right. If left and right is rudimentary, have them do 3. Even at the top levels, when I play with tournament kids, I say, okay, you're playing a tournament, where you going? They go down the middle, I'm going to use a slice, full speed, boom. Now you have them call the second one. If you've got a kid who's kind of weak with a slice into the body or can't serve wide, have them work on that. Those drills and practice routines. Again, I want to finish up by talking about this wrist snap, which is so dangerous if that's all you're teaching, because it really doesn't contribute anything to the serve. All it does is let all of these other components work. This is just, it just lets you decelerate. But so many people are teaching this now. The kids stand straight on and they're serving like this, and yeah, this is great until they come back and sue you because their elbow's shot and their shoulder's shot. Okay? And if I can do that with just my arm, think what I can do with my trunk and my hips, and right from here to here is where you serve. Okay? So we want to teach girls to serve like this, and we've got to teach them how to play first, left and right. Okay, what do I need to do to get the ball left? I'm going to use the net strap. I need to get the ball deeper. That means I need to toss it higher. I want some more pace. All right, so teach girls how to play first. They got to get a first serve in, left or right. They got to get a backhand in, left or right. They got to get it deep. Then you can work on your mechanics and things. Before you teach them a loop serve, teach them how to throw. Every day for 10 minutes. Could be, it's not a big deal. They're not throwing hard. But again, you've got to teach them how to throw in a match situation where it's left and right, then 3 courts, first serve, second serve, and make them nervous. But again, you cannot teach girls a loop serve if they don't have a mature throwing motion effectively. I'm sure you could do it over a long period of time, but again, they're going to say, what the heck, forget, you want the girls to want to do this, right? So trick them. Say, hey girls, we're going to teach you how to serve like this. By the way, we're going to practice throwing every week, every day, right? And then 3 weeks from now, we're going to say, hey girls, why don't you try serving like this? And they're going to say, wow. Okay? Do we have any questions?
I didn't quite follow what you were saying about imagery of 7 to 1, which I've been guilty of many times for a topspin serve, versus what you use as imagery or how you teach topspin.
Yeah. Topspin serve. If you're not going to go 7 to 1, where do you do it? What you do is say, look, you want to hit the ball at 7 o'clock and your racket is traveling toward 1 o'clock. But when you say 7 to 1, we have flexion, extension, supination, pronation. If you say 7 to 1, people will do this thing. And look at how my palm is in toward me. So when you tell people to slice by going from 6 to 12 or to slice, peel and look what happens. My wrist is this way. And we know that you want to be this way. So if you can think about, all right, why don't you hit the ball at 7 o'clock? And remember we talked about going up? If they hit the ball at 7 o'clock and go up, the ball will spin that way. If you want to have a little bit more slice, why don't you hit around 2 or 3 o'clock maybe? Okay? Make contact on the outside of the ball. hit at 7 o'clock, hit at 3 o'clock, as opposed to brush the ball from 7 to 1, because again, the ball's gone, first of all, and second of all, you don't want people slowing down because they're so hung up on their wrist and their arm, they're doing this stuff. When you really want them serving with this part of the body, just make contact up there. But once you get hung up on brushing the ball and doing all this wrist stuff, these kids are going to be serving with 300 to 600 watts energy. They're going to be serving with their arm. They're not going to get any pace, and they're just going to be focused on this. Watch how many of your kids have legs that are straight throughout the serve, especially girls, right? Because they're really hung up on this wrist snap and this brushing the ball and all this other jazz. So I don't know if that answers your question, but just have them hit at 7 o'clock or at 3 o'clock or at 6 o'clock as opposed to brush the ball from 7 to 1, because they'll slow down and they'll use the wrist and all that.
A lot of what I see you doing leads me to think that they're going to hit the ball pretty flat because they're going to be hitting them inside of it.
He said that looks like my shots are going to be flat because I'm hitting on the inside. But again, if I'm pronating like this, right, I'm putting that spin on the ball, right? So if I hit it at 7, the ball's going to spin this way. If I hit it at 3 o'clock, the ball's going to spin that way, correct? So it's so foreign to all of us, me included when I first heard it, because it just makes sense to wrap around the ball, peel it like an orange. But if I hit the ball at 3 o'clock, okay, if I hit the ball, I don't know if you can see it, at 3 o'clock, I'm going to put a spin that's going to go that way. If I hit the ball at 7 o'clock, okay, it's going to go that way. You might want to have your kids, I know a good pro who he starts out every warm-up by saying, don't use your legs at all. I just want you to play with your wrist a little bit and different contact points, and let's just use this to kind of get a feel for where you want to make contact on the ball. Okay, but if you try to hit the ball on 2 spots, you're going to be so focused in doing all this stuff with your wrist, right? This is where you're going to be doing most of your serving. So it's new, but you might want to try this stuff before you have your, hey, I heard this at a conference, we're going to try this. Get a basket of balls and try it yourself. Remember, you should never teach what you know. You should only teach what you understand. So many people say, hey, Dennis Vandermeer said go down the line. Well, he was talking about a particular situation or a type of player. Maybe it was a left dominant. Don't repeat things unless you understand them. I used to get in trouble early in my career because I would do that. Think about it. Never teach what you know, only teach what you understand. I've given you a lot of stuff today. You don't have to know all of this. Okay, some of you are just going to be happy with this frying pan stuff, right? Some of you are going to say, look, I'm just going to work on the legs and the rotation. I'm going to forget about all this other. That's where I'm going to really work. Some of you are going to be thrilled with the ball toss. That was critical, what we talked about today. Without changing anything, just get the ball toss in front of them and outside. In one of the videos that I have at my table, I videotaped about 10 different players. One was a Davis Cup player from some African country. We had a 5.0 guy. We had a couple of recreational players, and we videotaped their serves. And all of them, except for the one guy who served over 100 miles an hour, had their toss in here. I pointed that out to them, and they went and practiced. We went back and did the radar gun again, okay? And we had them, be legitimate, first serve, second serve. Once they realized about this ball toss, the average increase in ball speed for the recreational lady, for the 5.0 guy, 9 miles an hour. So imagine if you're serving right now 81, 82 miles an hour, and you can add 9 miles and go up to 91 with the same motion. But now you're getting the ball in front of you. Or even if you're at 72, 73, you're now up in the 80s. And all you did was move your toss, right? So look at your girls. How many of them are tossing the ball into the racket? Right? This low toss into the racket, and if with the frying pan, even if they can start moving their hips a little bit, look at that ball toss location.